Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Barry.
So the Caps come out of the Four Nations face-off break just on fire. 15 goals in 2 games. Ovi with the hat trick in the most recent game against the Oilers. I wanted to go back and see what some of the pundits were talking about and saying about this team before the season. So I pulled up the ESPN power rankings before the season started. They had the Caps ranked 20th in the NHL. They couldn't have been more wrong, and we're the benefactors. We're getting to see Ovi chase the Gretzky record. They have the best record in the NHL. They went from scoring the least points in the NHL or the least goals last year to the most this season. I mean, what a turnaround. This is not just the Ovi breaking Gretzky's record victory lap. This is a team that hopefully is going to make a deep run in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
It's insane. Actually, the visceral turnaround, the turnaround in the standings. If you remember last year, through 43 games, Ovi had 8 goals, and they were out of the playoff picture. And it just felt like if the record was going to come, it was going to be a slog, and it was going to be on a team that was like kind of scrapping to get the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs. And it just didn't really feel joyful. And then not only did Ovi pick up the pace over the second half of the season and really carry them, scratch them into the playoffs on the last night of the regular season, only to get just kind of blown out by the Rangers sweep in 4 games. But, Brian McClellan, when he was still the GM and hadn't been bumped up to president of hockey operations, and Chris Patrick, who is now the GM, and their front office, they went about this in a very methodical, analytical, progressive way and said, here are the boxes we need to check. And in the offseason, they checked all of them in really creative ways. They needed a number 2 center who might even be their number 1 center in Pierre-Luc Dubois to replace Evgeny Kuznetsov, who just they needed to blow to the moon, and they finally did last year when they cut him. And eventually traded him to Carolina.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt you here, Barry. The pickup of Luc Dubois was not popular because he had a huge contract and he had been kind of like toxic in his last couple locker rooms. So a lot of eyebrows were raised with that pickup, but it's been a big one.
And, Cakes, you're right. But I was told that, so he signed the big deal with L.A. the previous offseason, and it didn't work out. And the Capitals' assessment of that was, 1, we would have signed him to that deal at that time. We thought he was that good. 2, he signed with a team that didn't have a proper role for him, that he really was going to be the 3rd center in L.A., where here those minutes. And now he's in position where he's asking to take on the top centerman from the other team. So take Sunday as an example, he wanted to be matched up against Connor Planet coming off of all the heroics in the Four Nations face-off. He held McDavid without a shot on Sunday in the blowout. So that's been a brilliant pickup. All of their moves, Matt Roy as a defensive defenseman in a free agent deal, Jacob Chikrin, obviously, as an offensive-minded defenseman who has 17 goals and is just full. They get him locked up because he's a free agent after this year. They got him in a trade. It's just been amazing that they executed this plan. And if you cast it against the team they played on Saturday in Pittsburgh, it looks like Sidney Crosby, the other defining player in the NHL from this era, is going to be the one who is dragged to the finish line with a roster that can't really compete, that is getting blown out by Ovi and the Caps, a game in which the Caps scored 8 goals and Ovi didn't even need one. It's just a remarkable turnaround, and to have the 2 storylines of the record chase and the best record in the sport kind of married up, that just was not on my bingo card at all in October.
Don't you think Carbs is Coach of the Year?
It's crazy how good he is.
Yeah, he's really
and I
good.
think I don't know, Jason, the lay of the land in the NHL like I might in baseball enough, who else is doing a really good job. Dean Evison in Columbus is, if they get into the playoffs, there's a lot of sentiment for him because they just don't have the roster and the circumstances are different there. But you guys have Carbery on every week. he's just so sharp, and he considers things, and he talks about not just the team, which is obviously the most important part, but he talks about developing guys in their own careers so that the team can benefit. I mean, Alexei Protas had 3 goals last year. He has 23 this year. That's player development. Connor McMichael is a different player than he was last year. That's player development. I just think he is so sharp at pushing all the right buttons. He's got an edge to him. So he's not just a pushover players coach, but he's positive in that development. And it's just been, to me, a home run hire.